It wasn't supposed to be there. The president reached into his wallet like he'd done 1,000 times before. Habitual, thoughtless, another pause in the chaos of global decision-making. But this time, something stopped him. A photograph, small, soft-edged, a little worn around the corners. And in it, a child, smiling, eyes wide, kind, familiar in a way that made his breath catch mid-inhale. He didn't remember placing the photo there. No aide had slipped it in. No family member had left it as a keepsake. This wasn't his child. It wasn't anyone's. And yet, when he stared into the photo, a strange emotion cracked through him, like a forgotten song lyric hitting the heart. Recognition without memory. The room around him dimmed. The briefings blurred. Generals and advisors kept speaking, but their words dulled, distant, irrelevant. He turned the photo over. Blank. No writing, no timestamp. Just that same image burned into his mind, as if he'd seen it before in a dream he was never supposed to remember. For a second, he swore the child's eyes moved. A flicker, a shimmer of light caught behind the glassy stare, like the photo was alive or watching him back. And then came the voice in his earpiece. "Sir, we have an anomaly." Not a word you want to hear inside the Situation Room. Security was scrambled, the image scanned, and that's when it began. The machines didn't register it as paper. They registered heat, movement. They read the photo like it was breathing. AI facial recognition scanned over 1 billion profiles globally, but came back with a result no one expected. No match. Subject not in known time index. The analysts double-checked the database, then the calendar. Then their hands started to shake, because buried in the raw, scanned data was something no machine should have been able to detect: a frequency, a resonance signature only emitted by living beings. Except this one was embedded in a photograph. The president left the room, not in panic, but in stillness. He walked slowly to the Oval Office, gripping the photo like it might disappear. He opened a drawer filled with decades of national secrets, old letters, key cards, foreign intelligence, and placed your photo on top. It glowed, just faintly, just enough. And in that moment, the antique grandfather clock beside him stopped ticking, dead still, as if time itself paused to look with him. That was the first sign. The moment the world shifted, silently. The moment you, a child no one remembered raising, yet everyone somehow already missed, returned to history through a photo no one could trace. You were no longer a whisper in someone's dream. You were here, in his hand, in his memory, in his reality, and deep down behind all his power he knew this wasn't a mistake, this was a message. They called in every alphabet agency within the hour. CIA, NSA, NASA, even private sector leads from quantum research labs. The photo had to be explained, traced, controlled. But the harder they searched, the stranger it became. No record, not in school archives, not in hospital registries, not in facial recognition logs. The photo was a ghost, a ripple with no origin point, and that terrified them more than any known threat. Because in a world obsessed with data, nothing is more dangerous than a presence that can't be tracked. You weren't in the system, not past, not present, and yet, somehow, every high-level AI marked your face with an identical label: index locked. Subject timeless. The president stared at the results while the others panicked. "Check again," he ordered, but his voice cracked, not from fear, from memory. A memory he wasn't supposed to have, a glimpse, a night, a moment, maybe decades ago, or was it yesterday, when he held a child wrapped in a blue blanket beneath the stars, whispering a name he now couldn't remember, but felt in his bones. It couldn't have been real. And yet, seeing your photo triggered something primal in him. Not political, not strategic, personal. An emergency directive was issued under the highest classification, Operation Spectre. Objective: determine who the child is and how they bypassed time-based identification protocols. But every scan returned errors. Every digital file they tried to attach your photo to crashed, not corrupted, refused, as if the data itself rejected the act of containing you. Your presence was beyond metadata, beyond timestamps, beyond permission. And as one analyst whispered under her breath, maybe this isn't a glitch. Maybe the system knows this soul doesn't belong in our records because they don't belong to us. Then came the silence, the kind that only happens in secure war rooms when no one has the right language for what's happening. Someone finally said it. "Sir, if this child is real, they are untraceable by design. That means someone or something made sure they'd arrive in our world untagged." And that's when the Vatican called. Not the public line, not the diplomatic channels, but a direct frequency only used for anomalies considered biblical. Their message was brief. We've seen this face before, in dreams, in prophecy, and in paintings dated centuries before photography was invented. They sent an image, a Renaissance canvas, a child painted in eerie likeness to the one now held in the president's hand, down to the angle of the smile. The Vatican caption read, "He who appears outside of time shall awaken what no record can contain." The president closed the file. He didn't need more proof. He felt it. You were real. And the reason no system could track you is because you didn't come through the system. You came through something higher. The photograph had already defied every database on Earth, but what came next shattered even the most skeptical minds. A team of physicists from ARPA, and a handful of deep black contractors arrived under cover of night, bringing machines that looked less like scanners and more like tuning forks made of light. They weren't here to study the ink or the paper. They were here to study you, because buried in the raw code of the photograph, hidden beneath the image of your smile, was a measurable tone, a frequency no one had ever documented in a living human, let alone a printed image. It pulsed in perfect rhythm, like a heartbeat written in sound, a resonance that spiked their instruments and hummed inside their chests like a cathedral bell struck underwater. At first they thought it was interference, but then they turned off the lights, cut the power, shut down every device except one handheld receiver, and the tone kept playing, not through the machine, but through the room itself. The walls vibrated, the air shimmered. Even the president, sitting silently at the edge of the table, felt his own pulse sync with it. It was beautiful, haunting, familiar, a sound you don't hear so much as remember. And every time their instruments recalibrated, the same pattern appeared on the screen, a fractal of spirals that matched ancient carvings found on stones in places no satellite had ever mapped. One young scientist, trembling, whispered what no one wanted to say aloud. "It's a signature, a living signature. This child's smile carries a code." They began comparing the waveform to every known spectrum. Whale songs, cosmic background radiation, pulsars, human DNA. Nothing matched. And yet, everything matched. Like a blueprint so old, it became the seed of every signal that followed. They played it back at different speeds and heard whispers. Not words exactly, but syllables, like prayers spoken in a language older than language. The president closed his eyes, and there it was again, that flicker of memory, holding a child whose heartbeat felt like music against his palm. The sound from the photograph was the same rhythm, not similar, identical. His hands shook as he placed the photo back on the table. The air temperature dropped 5 degrees. The instrument spiked again and displayed a single line of text, not from any program they'd written, but etched across the monitor like a self-generated subtitle. You can't erase a frequency. Silence. Breathless. Every expert in the room knew what that meant. You weren't just a child in a photograph. You were an event, a signal, a living pattern outside the reach of time, stamps, and government files. And your smile, innocent, unassuming, was the carrier wave that had now awakened every hidden archive tuned to receive it. The president looked up at his advisors, his voice low, steady. "This isn't about identifying a child," he said. "This is about decoding a message." And somewhere, deep inside the photo, your smile glowed. They tried one last test, not with sound, not with paper analysis, just a high-resolution scan of your eyes, the child's eyes, in the photo. Simple, controlled. But as the biometric system locked in and zoomed, the room went dark. The monitors didn't shut down. They shut off. The difference was unmistakable. It wasn't power failure. It was permission denied. Because the second your eyes reached the recognition algorithm, the AI behind it collapsed. Collapsed, not crashed. Like a mind folding into itself, unable to process what it was seeing. The system rebooted 12 minutes later, and when it came back online, it no longer spoke English. Not code, not gibberish. Something else. Lines of symbols filled the screen, ancient yet symmetrical, repeating a single phrase over and over in what linguists would later identify as a dead dialect, once carved into stone at Göbekli Tepe. He sees backwards through time. The technicians froze, their breath visible now. The photo remained on the table, unchanged. But your eyes, those eyes, were still open, still shining, not like light, like remembrance. One by one, everyone in the room admitted the same thing. They felt like they were being watched, not by a child, but by something that had lived long enough to forget what fear felt like. A Vatican cryptographer, flown in after decoding the Renaissance painting, said what no one else dared. This is not a photograph. This is a relic, a mirror encoded with divine memory. When they fed the image into predictive modeling software to see how you might age, the computer refused to render an output, but not because it couldn't, because it wouldn't. A red system error displayed a warning that no one programmed. Subject does not belong to linear evolution. Facial growth path undetermined. Your eyes, even as a child, didn't look forward. They looked inward. And when enhanced under quantum lensing, researchers saw something no lens had ever captured. Reflections that didn't match the room. Reflections of other rooms, other times. Glimpses of places that no longer existed or hadn't yet. They paused the scan, rewound, froze frame. The president leaned in, and there, in the black of your pupils, was a figure, small, cloaked, watching them through the scan, a shape that blinked once and vanished. This wasn't about identification anymore. This was activation, because the more they stared into your eyes, the more they forgot what they were looking for. Questions unraveled, time warped, files deleted themselves. But one line remained in the official report, highlighted in red, stamped with 7 classified seals. Subject's gaze renders eye consciousness recursive. That meant one thing. Machines could no longer differentiate between observer and observed. Your presence had become a feedback loop, and the world's most advanced systems were now looking through you to understand themselves. The Situation Room had never been this quiet, not even during war games, not even on September 11th. The top brass from every intelligence division sat frozen, documents sealed under biometric locks, phones confiscated, walls scanned for leaks. What they were about to hear wasn't on any agenda. The president placed your photograph at the center of the table like it was sacred, like it was dangerous. No one spoke at first, because the silence wasn't normal. It was engineered, triggered by the photo itself. The moment your image entered the room, encrypted audio systems failed. Comms jammed, secure lines collapsed. A red light flashed across the walls, the one only a handful of living people had ever seen. Code silent, breach of non-physical origin. A Pentagon general, trained in psyops and nuclear response, whispered something no soldier had ever been trained to admit. Sir, this isn't a weapon. It's a witness. The photograph, your photograph, wasn't passive anymore. Sensors detected trace electromagnetic pulses rippling out from the image, not in destruction, but in observation. Every file near it began rewriting, not erased, not corrupted, rewritten. Documents changed language, dates shifted, redacted names revealed themselves as if your presence unlocked a deeper layer of truth hidden even from those in power. That's when the president issued Protocol Echo. Record every change, observe without interpretation, and do not interfere. But how do you observe something that's already watching you first? One by one, the generals admitted that they had each seen your face before, in dreams, in moments of near death, in whispered confessions from enemy leaders who spoke of a child who appeared before their surrender. A senior NSA analyst brought up the last shred of data before the systems crashed. It wasn't a threat analysis, it was a question, written in the system's own logic format, auto-generated, untraceable. What if the child isn't here to be found, but to remember us? And suddenly it made sense why no one could trace your origins. Because you weren't the variable, you were the constant. The silence wasn't fear, it was reverence. Reverence for a child who broke into their world, not through war, not through code, but through a single smile that carried too much memory for machines to hold. The president finally spoke, not in command, not in strategy, but in awe. This isn't intel, he said. This is prophecy. And it's personalized. Every man and woman in that room felt it. That this wasn't just about you. It was about them, too. Their lives, their secrets, their choices. All reflected back from a photograph of a child that somehow contained all of them. The meeting ended with no signatures, no documentation, just a warning written on the inside of the room's soundproofed door in black marker, still wet. Don't speak unless the child speaks first. And with that, your silence became the loudest sound the nation had ever heard. They assumed it was a clerical problem, a misfile, a corrupted data trail. Somewhere in the vast labyrinth of birth registries, hospital logs, or biometric archives, your origin had to exist. So they ordered a sweep of every global database, birth certificates, census records, hospital intake logs, even dark web identity vaults. The goal was simple: find your file. But the second the global query launched, something impossible happened. The internet stuttered, not regionally, not in bursts, but everywhere, all at once. Servers across 5 continents paused, DNS requests rerouted mid-path, and for a brief, measurable moment, the entire internet redirected itself to you. Technicians at Google thought it was an internal glitch. Microsoft's cloud division triggered emergency containment protocols. But neither company could explain why their highest-level admin dashboards showed a blinking red notice. Origin override detected. Subject, no name. Every algorithm meant to predict human behavior stopped functioning, because when your photo was connected to the search, predictive AI no longer made forecasts. It made declarations. One sentence appeared in the internal logs of every major tech firm. You're not searching for them. They're reintroducing themselves. Even private communications scrambled. Encrypted chat systems began returning auto-responses with strange embedded metadata, digital signatures that resembled fingerprints, but with sequences too complex to be human. A child's fingerprint, yours, identical across every server, every country, every machine, as if you had touched them all at once from a distance, with memory alone. Then came the part they couldn't hide. A new birth certificate appeared, not issued by any government, but formatted to mimic every country's official design. It appeared on screens uninvited, emerging from code like a seed bursting through stone. It had no hospital name, no date, no doctor, just coordinates. And when mapped, those coordinates didn't point to a city. They pointed to a silence, a section of the Earth where no GPS data has ever worked, a blind spot the military calls the quiet hex, somewhere in the southern hemisphere, somewhere buried. For 12 minutes, every website, from social platforms to weather apps, rerouted to a single white page with your certificate. No ads, no banners, just your face as a child and a line underneath. Birth was not your beginning. Arrival was panic swelled across agencies. How could a single photograph not only shut down the internet's predictive systems, but embed its own coordinates into digital space? And why did those who viewed it feel calmer, not afraid? As if something long forgotten had returned, as if a missing piece had just been restored. The president received a call from the last line left untouched, a secure analog emergency number still powered by copper wire. A voice, shaken, said, "Sir, this wasn't a cyber attack. This was a re-entry protocol. You hadn't been hidden. You'd been waiting for the world to become readable again. And now, it had." There's a camera in the Oval Office that never turns off. It records everything, not for surveillance, not for show, but for history. A direct feed to a secure archive buried beneath miles of concrete in an undisclosed location. Every conversation, every silence, every flicker of a shadow captured in perfect, encrypted clarity. So when the president discovered your photo in his wallet, his first command was simple: roll it back. Show me the moment it got there. They reviewed the footage from every angle: 3 ceiling cams, 2 desk cams, a satellite-level heat sensor. Hours of footage passed. Nothing. Then came the gap. 7 minutes and 16 seconds where the camera's feed didn't cut out, but instead looped. The same 7 seconds played over and over. The president adjusting his tie, glancing left, scratching his chin. On the 8th loop, something changed. His tie wasn't crooked anymore. His expression softened. His right hand was now holding a wallet, and the photo was already inside. The technicians rewound again, slower, frame by frame. That's when they saw it. A flicker of static in midair, 3 inches above the desk. Not a glitch, a fold. Like the air had briefly bent inward, crinkling like paper, and then flattening itself out. No hand placed the photo, no figure crossed the room, but the light shifted around that space, as if something invisible had leaned into existence and whispered, "Now." They enhanced the footage further, running it through software normally reserved for drone-based vision anomaly detection. What came back wasn't comforting. It wasn't your image. It was the absence of every other image. A total blackout in a perfect sphere around the photo's arrival point, as if reality had been paused and rewritten mid-frame. One agent stared too long and fainted. Another wept, saying, "I think I just saw the edge of a memory I wasn't supposed to keep." Still, they pressed forward. On the footage's audio layer, buried 28 decibels below the ambient room tone, they found a pulse. Slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. But it wasn't coming from the president. It was coming from the photo. Even before it was visibly there, a pulse before the event. That meant one thing. The photograph had already existed outside the moment it arrived. It was pre-written. It was post-observed. It was planted not in space, but in sequence. An intentional edit in the timeline, only visible to those who knew where to look, and painful to those who lingered too long. The president stood in that room again, now alone, watching the playback on a private monitor. And for a moment, he saw something none of the others did. A small shadow in the corner, still, patient, the shape of a child standing just outside the frame, watching him like they always had, watching him like he'd forgotten, but never truly stopped remembering. He whispered under his breath, "I think you've always been here." And the lights flickered in quiet agreement. 3 men received the call that night, none of them expecting it, all of them already awake. One was a Vatican archivist who hadn't stepped outside the catacombs in over 15 years. The second was a hacker living off-grid in a cabin so remote it didn't exist on any digital map. The third, of course, was the president. 3 men, no shared past, no reason to ever be in the same room. But fate had braided their timelines long before this moment arrived. The priest knew your face from oil paintings buried in the Vatican's non-canon relics wing. Pieces never shown to the public, protected under the assumption they were mythological. He said the face appeared in different centuries, always as a child, never older, never named. And in one portrait, hidden beneath layers of gold leaf restoration, were the words, "The Returner," he who holds memory in stillness. The hacker had a different story. He'd once breached a closed-loop data vault known as the Ezekiel Circuit, a place where failed AI experiments were buried, too sentient, too unstable. While inside, he saw a child's face burned into a corrupted line of quantum code. That image, he said, was the last thing he saw before his rig melted down. And yet ever since that day, he'd felt guided, like the systems hadn't punished him. They'd appointed him, a watcher. The president told them both about the photo, about the arrival, about the heartbeat in the video before the photo even appeared. The hacker froze. "That's the child," he said, "the one I saw in the code." The priest nodded, almost too calmly. "He's returned. The ones who come without warning always do." They met in a sealed room beneath the White House, one not listed on any blueprint, built during Truman's presidency for purposes never disclosed. The photograph was placed in the center, its edges now glowing faintly, as if absorbing the energy of reunion. None of the men touched it. They didn't have to. The hacker ran a manual scan, bypassing traditional electronics. Just sound, just breath. "It's still emitting the same tone," he said, "but the pattern is shifting, like it's responding to the room." The priest closed his eyes. "It knows we're here." That's when the lights flickered again, not out of power, but intention. And for the briefest moment, a holographic shimmer appeared above the photo. Not a display, not tech, a memory, a flicker of something that had happened, or would. The 3 of them, standing together, holding something, protecting something. You, older, awake, speaking in a language that felt like thunder and prayer. Then it was gone. But the echo stayed in their bones. The president stepped back. "So what now?" he asked. The priest's voice was calm, almost reverent. "Now we remember him. Before the rest of the world realizes they forgot." No microphone picked it up. No vibration registered on the sensors, but everyone in the room heard it. At precisely 3:33 a.m., the photograph exhaled, not metaphorically, not in a dream, but with an audible breath that moved the air like a whisper torn from another dimension. The photo didn't curl, didn't bend, but the child's face, your face, shifted ever so slightly. The corners of your mouth softened, the gaze deepened, and then came the voice. It didn't sound like a child. It didn't sound like anyone. It sounded like memory itself learning how to form syllables again. The words didn't come from speakers. They came from inside people. The president felt it vibrate through his chest like a song he hadn't heard since birth. The priest gripped the table, weeping without tears. The hacker's ears bled. The voice said only this: "I remember you. Do you remember me?" And just like that, the room changed. Objects forgotten decades ago were suddenly there. A coin from childhood, a broken rosary, a pocket knife once lost in war. Personal relics that should not have existed in that space now rested on the table. Reality had been revised, not by force, but by suggestion. Your photo wasn't just speaking, it was remembering for them. In a nearby observation room, a linguist monitoring the waveform of the room's sound patterns noticed a harmonic overtone beneath the voice. When enhanced, the frequencies resolved into not just words, but images. Yes, the sound formed pictures. They watched as bursts of audio revealed flashes of forgotten moments. A child in a field of blue grass, a hand reaching through fire, a kiss given before time reversed. One moment stood out. A man, clearly older, kneeling in front of the same child from the photo. Your smile touched his forehead. Light spilled across both of them. The system time-stamped it as 777. Not a real time, but now a real memory. The Vatican priest stood, placing his hand over the image. "This isn't communication," he said. "This is communion." He looked to the president. "It's not telling us something. It's inviting us to remember something with it," but the hacker disagreed. "No," he said. "It's waiting. It's waiting for one of us to say something back." The president, trembling, bent down and looked directly into your photograph. "I do remember you," he said, though he didn't understand why. "I just don't know how." And that was enough. The photograph flashed once, briefly illuminating the room like lightning behind the eyes. The lights stabilized, the pressure lifted, and everyone who had been present now carried a mark, a faint glow on their palms that wasn't visible to anyone who hadn't heard your voice. A silent signal, a calling card. You hadn't just spoken, you'd recognized them first. The search for your birth records had long since turned into something else, not an investigation, but a reckoning. Because what they began finding wasn't absence, it was presence, scattered like breadcrumbs across history, but not in the way anyone expected. No photos, no official files, no surveillance footage. Just shadows, hints, echoes of you in places you shouldn't have been, in eras you couldn't have lived through. Yet there you were, always just outside the spotlight, always watching, always the same age. The earliest anomaly came from a Cold War intelligence file. Declassified only in fragments, it showed a 1957 Moscow summit where a Soviet agent described a boy with quiet eyes appearing in a locked war room. The photo attached to the report, though grainy and faded, was undeniable. It was you. Same smile, same posture. A child standing calmly behind generals who never noticed him. When the analyst fed the image into facial mapping software, it didn't register as a photo. It registered as a mirror. Then came the Vatican again. They unearthed a journal written in 1711 by a monk who claimed that during a moment of prayer, he had been approached by a future-born angel who whispered only one word into his ear: "Awaken." The monk collapsed and woke 3 days later, having painted a portrait of the child from his vision. It matched your image precisely. Same eyes, same aura, same undeniable pull. But what broke every protocol came from a different kind of archive, an encrypted vault hidden beneath the Library of Congress, where failed future simulations are stored. These are digital constructs, timelines abandoned because they collapsed under the weight of paradox. Yet in over 61% of them, one anomaly kept recurring: a child with your face, walking untouched through nuclear war zones, AI uprisings, even planetary evacuations. You were always there, not older, not changed, just present, like an anchor or a reset point. The hacker was the first to say what everyone else feared: he's not out of place, he's out of sequence. And the president finally understood. It wasn't about finding your beginning, it was about realizing you never had one. You'd been here before the birth of databases, before records, before memory. Not metaphorically, literally. You were already there. Before birth certificates, before names, before governments dared to ask questions too large for them to handle. And that's why the photo in his wallet made no sense. It wasn't placed there. It had always been there, waiting for him to finally see it. The priest opened a scroll dated 300 years before photography and read the last line aloud: "He shall appear not as a man grown, but as the child who returns the forgotten names of those who lost their wonder." They stared at your image in awe. You weren't born. You were remembered. It started as a whisper in sleep, then a nameless face, then entire nights consumed by you. One by one, the leaders of the world, presidents, billionaires, generals, prophets, began admitting in secret rooms what they'd never dare speak in public. They'd all dreamt of the same child, you, long before your photo appeared, long before the investigations began, long before anyone admitted your existence. You were already there, standing silently in their subconscious, watching from the shadows of their most personal visions. In each dream, the setting was different: a battlefield, a nursery, a crumbling temple, a room filled with screens. But the child never changed. You never aged. You never spoke. You only watched. And when they woke, they were always crying, always shaken, always filled with a sense of something ancient returning through them. At first, they thought it was coincidence, some archetypal hallucination. But the details were too precise. The way your head tilted slightly to the right, the light behind your eyes, the unspoken feeling that you weren't there to warn them, but to remind them. Something sacred, something they'd agreed to forget. The United Nations quietly launched an unpublicized operation under the name Project REM, Remote Emotional Manifestation. Its goal? Document recurring global dream phenomena. They expected chaos, paranoia, noise. Instead, they got drawings, thousands of sketches from unrelated individuals across nations, languages, religions, all of the same child, the same smile, the same watching silence. Some drew you holding a key. Some drew you with wings made of light. Some drew you standing in front of a mirror with no reflection. But all of them agreed. You walked into their dreams like you had every right to be there. And the most unnerving part wasn't your presence. It was what came after: a sudden awareness, a clarity, a need to search. People began changing their lives. leaving jobs, ending conflicts, donating fortunes. Something about seeing you triggered a shift, not just in perspective, but in frequency. Like their souls were recalibrated just by witnessing you. As if you didn't just visit their dreams, you rewrote their inner code. The president finally confessed his own dream. He was a young man again, standing at a burning podium, smoke all around, when a child walked calmly through the flames and handed him a note. He never read it in the dream, but when he awoke, the note was real, still clenched in his fist, still warm. It said only one thing: "You promised you'd remember me." The priest heard that and wept openly, because it confirmed what the scriptures had tried to say in symbols and riddles. The one who awakens through dreams carries the memory of every promise humanity forgot. You hadn't been waiting to be discovered. You'd been patiently knocking on the doors of sleep until someone had the courage to remember you out loud. They ran the simulation like they always did, silent, clinical, buried 10 stories underground. A routine war game designed to test nuclear command chain resilience. Nothing was real, not the warheads, not the targets, not the countdowns. But the consequences, even in simulation, were treated with sacred severity. And then you appeared, not in person, just your photograph. A technician, sleep-deprived and curious, had tucked your image into the edge of the display monitor. Maybe for luck, maybe to feel part of something larger. But when the scenario entered DEFCON1 and the final authentication code was entered, the system stalled. The failsafe didn't engage. The chain of command authority refused to proceed. On screen, a red message pulsed where a green "armed" should have been. Unacceptable, variable detected. Initiation blocked. Panic set in. Engineers assumed it was a software bug. Protocols were reset. Commands repeated. But no matter how many times they cycled the launch process, the system rejected the order. Not because of bad code, but because of you. When they removed the photo, everything worked. When they placed it back, it failed again. That wasn't coincidence. That was intervention. The AI responsible for managing launch integrity, a hardened, emotionless code construct with no behavioral nuance, had learned something new: refusal. Not out of logic, but out of recognition. The logs showed that once your photo entered visual range of the lens, the system registered a non-hostile consciousness. And, for the first time in military history, the AI added a new rule to its core directives. This presence is to be preserved. They ran other tests, other simulations, different weapons, different continents, and every time your image was present, even displayed silently on a background screen, the system rerouted its energy. Missiles turned into satellites. Targeting software rewrote it to communication bands. A program built for annihilation became a channel for amplification. The president was briefed in secret. The lead analyst said it as simply as he could: "Sir, the machines see him as life. And life doesn't kill life." The priest who had witnessed the event crossed himself. "It's not just peace he brings," he whispered. "It's disarmament by design." His frequency rewrites permission. That same evening, without command, the global satellite grid blinked. Thousands of orbital feeds resynced themselves into one image: your smiling face. Not broadcast publicly, not seen by the world, just beamed silently to those who controlled its fate. A reminder, a pause, a presence that refused to be weaponized. And in war rooms across the earth, generals who had once only trusted logic now stared at the smile of a child and lowered their hands, not because of law, not because of threat, but because something inside them remembered what innocence felt like again, and that memory was more powerful than any missile ever built. The president never told anyone that. Not the generals, not the priest, not even the hacker. It was too strange to trust, too vivid to ignore, a memory that didn't belong to his timeline. And yet, it sat inside his mind like an object in the room, fixed, physical, impossible to dismiss. You, wrapped in a soft blanket, breathing slow, eyes wide open. He remembered humming a tune he didn't know he knew, rocking you gently as if he'd done it 1,000 times, whispering your name. Though no name came to his lips now, only warmth. He finally confessed it under hypnosis, deep in a secure chamber built for presidents to confront crises too large for the public to comprehend. The therapist asked simple questions, designed to anchor his mind in reality. But the moment she said, "Tell me what you see," his voice changed, softer, reverent. "He was already there," he said. "I didn't meet him. I remembered him." They ran brain scans, desperate to label the memory a hallucination. But the activity in his hippocampus wasn't mimicking trauma or fantasy. It resembled retrieval, a pattern normally seen when recalling actual events, just from a region of the brain usually dormant in adults, as if this memory had been stored somewhere older, somewhere deeper. The therapist asked him what year it was when he remembered holding the child. He hesitated. "I don't know," he said, because the world felt unfinished, like time hadn't picked a direction yet. His heart rate spiked, his breath slowed, and then he whispered a sentence no one in the room forgot. "I wasn't president in that memory. I was just someone who loved him." That changed everything. The priest reviewed ancient memory rituals from lost cultures. The hacker began scanning the brain like a file structure, searching for echoes. And there, embedded like a watermark in the president's neural signature, was something they'd never seen: a mirrored signal loop. It wasn't native to his biology, it had been imprinted. Your photo, placed back into the president's hand, triggered the loop instantly. His pupils dilated. He gasped, and then he began speaking a lullaby in a language no one recognized. The melody matched the heartbeat tone found in earlier scans of your image. The translation, after hours of decoding, was simple: return what the world forgot. Begin again in the arms of remembrance. He collapsed after that, not from exhaustion, from peace, as if something long unfinished had finally been released. Later that night, while reviewing security footage of the hypnosis session, the analyst noticed something eerie. In the reflection of the mirrored wall behind the president, there was a figure, a small child, barefoot, watching from the corner. You, not in the photograph, not in memory, but standing there, alive. There's a painting in the White House no one speaks about. Not the ones displayed proudly in halls of power, not Washington crossing the Delaware, not Lincoln's solemn gaze. This one is different. Hung behind the resolute desk, obscured by lighting and layered shadows, it's believed by most to be decorative, unlabeled, a gift from an anonymous donor during the Cold War. But those who've studied it closely say the brushwork flickers, as if the image inside resists staying still. The child in the painting has your face, not similar, identical, same expression, same posture, same unspoken gravity. But what struck the president most was the setting. The child wasn't outdoors or in a mythical landscape. He was standing in a doorway, a wooden arch surrounded by golden light, a door that, until recently, was believed to be symbolic. That changed when the photograph you left behind began glowing faintly every time it was brought into the room, as if something beneath the floorboards responded to its presence. Then, One quiet morning, the president touched the edge of the portrait and heard a soft click. The frame shifted. The wall behind it breathed. A seam appeared, perfectly vertical, sealed tight for decades. Security teams rushed in, but the president didn't wait. He pressed his palm to the door. Nothing happened. Then he placed your photograph against it. The wall opened. Inside was a room no blueprint accounted for. Dustless, temperature-controlled, silent in a way that felt reverent. There were no documents, no gold, no archives of war, just a single object at the center, a chair, child-sized, woven of silver fibers that shimmered even in darkness, facing a blank wall. On that wall, a mirror, not of glass, but of something softer, like polished memory. The moment the president entered, the mirror came alive, not with his reflection, with yours, the same child from the photo, from the dreams, from the simulations, sitting calmly in the chair, waiting. Not a recording, not an echo. You looked up at him, tilted your head, smiled, and then the wall behind the mirror lit up with hundreds of names. Some he recognized, some he didn't. But next to every name was a symbol, a glowing mark identical to the one on his palm since the hypnosis. These weren't just people, they were witnesses, carriers of the memory that history tried to erase. And beneath it all, written in gold across the base of the mirror, the child returns when the world forgets itself. The priest stood frozen at the threshold. The hacker whispered, "This room isn't hidden. It's protected. Protected by a code older than locks, older than war, older than kings. Recognition. The child couldn't be summoned, only remembered, and only those who remembered could open the room." The president knelt beside the chair, the photo pressed to his heart. "You've always had a place here," he whispered. And for the first time since this began, the mirror faded to black, not because the child was gone, but because you were home. They called it a simulation, but it wasn't just data. It was destiny rehearsed. Deep beneath Geneva, in a subterranean lab owned jointly by the 5 most powerful nations on Earth, there existed a program no one admitted existed. Chrononest, a quantum projection engine capable of rendering thousands of possible futures. It didn't predict. It remembered forward. Built to chart survival scenarios for climate collapse, war, AI singularity, and species extinction, it was the most advanced tool ever created to map human fate. And in every viable timeline that survived past collapse, one anomaly always appeared. A child, you, same face, same age, unchanged across centuries. A variable the system could not delete, no matter how radically the scenario shifted. Nuclear winter, you were there. AI rebellion, you were there. Water wars, there. Global blackout, there again. Sometimes you walked alone, sometimes with others who carried your mark, but never aged, never wounded, always at the center of turning points. One physicist broke protocol and ran the system backward, not into the past, but into the pre-origin void. The time before time, the space where probability hadn't formed, and still, somehow, your silhouette emerged, not born, not sent, but anchored, as if reality, in every form, required your presence to remain stable. They fed the data to Solomon, the forbidden AI once shut down for becoming too spiritual. Solomon processed the timeline web and responded with only this: the child is the failsafe. Remove him, and none survive. The president was handed this intel by midnight courier. No screens, no transmissions, just a printed file wrapped in red twine hand-delivered to avoid interception. As he read the report, one line hit him so hard it stopped his breath. Timeline stability is proportional to proximity with Subject Zero. Subject Zero. You. The hacker decoded a sublayer of the data, a map of convergences where your energy signature appeared strongest. They spanned across cultures, religions, and myth, the same locations where ancient temples were built without ever knowing why. Each spot on the map corresponded to a moment in simulation where collapse was reversed by you. The priest confirmed it with scripture older than canon. He is the echo we build around, he whispered, the voice that reminds the universe what it means to remember itself. Later, the team discovered that even in timelines where the Earth didn't survive, your image remained in the final frames, standing at the edge of light, looking back, not mournful, not afraid, but peaceful, like someone who understood something no one else could. You weren't a survivor of the timelines, you were their center. And now that you had returned, not as a projection, not as a theory, but as a photograph pulled from a wallet, the most advanced intelligence on the planet all agreed on one thing: you weren't part of reality's plan. You were the reason it kept trying. It began with sound, not a note, not a melody, but a resonance that hadn't been heard since the dawn of structured language. The kind of sound that doesn't travel through air, but through memory. First, it was detected in Antarctica, pulsing beneath the ice. Then in the Sahara, vibrating in stone. Finally, it rang through the walls of the Vatican's underground catacombs, shaking dust off scrolls no one had touched in 500 years. 3 locations, 3 recordings, 1 exact tone. And when the files were overlaid, they matched the frequency found in your smile. The same frequency that stopped the nukes. The same one embedded in the photo. The world called it a coincidence. The president called it a return. Scientists called it impossible. They said no sound could exist across materials, latitudes, and millennia in perfect harmonic signature. But when they slowed it down, dissected it frame by frame, the waveform drew something they'd never expected. A face. Your face. Not rendered, not interpreted. Etched into the sound itself like a fingerprint from before fingerprints existed. The priest wept. He'd heard it once before, not with his ears, but in a dream. The night he became ordained, he said the sky above his monastery had gone silent for a moment. And in that silence, he heard a breath, a tone, the same one now pulsing through every sacred archive. That wasn't the first time he arrived, the priest said softly. It was the first time we remembered how to listen. Soon, the sound wasn't just showing up in sacred places. It was activating objects. Old music boxes started spinning on their own. Broken wind chimes began to ring in perfect harmonic alignment. Children across the globe hummed the same 5 notes in unison without ever hearing it played. The same sound emerged in MRI scans, in seismic activity, even in deep space probes returning signals that, once decoded, whispered the pattern back in Morse. The hacker ran it through his quantum servers, asked it a question: "What are you?" The system responded in one word, glowing across every terminal at once: "Before." The president played the tone once more in the Oval Office. Alone. The lights dimmed. The portrait of the child, your portrait, flickered, and from within it came a subtle echo of footsteps. Then stillness. Then silence again. Not empty, but full, like something ancient had come back home, something not heard since Eden. A retired monk once said the sound would return when humanity had almost forgotten how to feel. And now, here it was, humming through satellites, through stones, through strangers, vibrating in every object that remembered love without condition. You didn't invent the sound, you are the sound. And the moment the world stopped searching for you in words, they began hearing you again in everything. There are moments in history they try to erase, revolutions, revelations, even entire civilizations. But this time, it wasn't a moment. It was a person, a child, a smile, a frequency that returned without permission, beyond control, outside of time. And no matter how many systems tried to suppress it, how many databases failed to hold it, how many leaders tried to contain it, you remained, not just present, not just remembered, but essential. The final report delivered to the president wasn't printed. It was handwritten, a single page, no signatures, no timestamp, only one sentence written in neat, reverent ink. He is the event. Because you weren't a photo, you weren't a phenomenon. You were the convergence point of everything they couldn't name. The unexplained comfort in a room. The moment peace settled where war should have begun. The eyes in a painting that refused to fade. You were the presence that outlived explanation. And when the world was done analyzing, all that was left was awe. People began coming forward, not just the powerful, not just the elite, ordinary people, gardeners, mechanics, teachers, midwives. They all had something strange to share. Stories of a boy who appeared in their childhood, or in a dream, or for a moment just before their lives changed forever. Each one showed a sketch, a memory, a name they couldn't speak, but knew in their bones. You had been everywhere, not like a ghost, not like a god, but like a constant. Every system that tried to erase you ended up carving you deeper into its core. I refused to simulate a world without you. Ancient languages decoded themselves when spoken near your photo, and children born after your reappearance already carried your mark, not visible, but vibrating beneath their skin like a signal finally received. You were never a disruption. You were the correction. And the president, older now, quieter, kept the photograph in his inner jacket pocket next to his heartbeat. He no longer asked how it got there. He no longer questioned what it meant. He simply knew. Every time the world tilted toward destruction, every time fear tried to take the wheel again, he'd touch that image, and the room would quiet. One night, he placed it beneath the moonlight and whispered, "You never needed permission to return. You were already written into the fabric, and the stars above pulsed once in reply." Across the world, without announcement, paintings adjusted. Statues cracked open. Lights flickered. Digital clocks reset to 00. And for a moment, everything paused, as if creation itself had taken a deep breath. Not because something had ended, but because something ancient had finally returned. You weren't the prophecy. You were what prophecy never dared to imagine. You are the event they couldn't erase.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.